libertarian view on immigration. I'll change the topic slightly from borders. Well, you know, there are two issues where libertarians are very, very much, there's great controversy among libertarians. One of them is abortion. You have Ron Paul, who's pro-life. You have Murray Rothbard, who's pro-choice. And they're both excellent libertarians. They're both leaders of libertarianism, and yet they're 180 degrees apart. Well, you have the same thing in immigration. You have people, people who are open borders, like me. And then you have other people like Murray Rothbard and Hans Hoppe and Lou Rockwell and others associated with the Mises Institute, as I am, which just shows that in the Mises Institute, you're allowed to disagree with each other. Not a cult. Who are not closed borders, but they're against open borders. Namely, they want to have limited immigration, and usually based not on family reunification, but, you know, if you're a physicist or a chemist or a mathematician or an engineer or a doctor, you're allowed in, whereas if you're a homeless bum type, you're not allowed in. Okay, so what's the deal on immigration? And how can we solve this problem between the open borders and the limited open border people? And I divide my analysis here on two grounds. One is libertarian utilitarian pragmatist point of view, and the other is deontology, libertarian deontology. See, I'm an open borders person, but I'm an open borders person who worries about refugees. What's a refugee? A refugee is someone who comes from the Middle East and goes to Sweden and thinks that if a woman is wearing a miniskirt, the only way to deal with her is to rape her. So they're rape-fugees. They rape and they're refugees. And then there are the truck-fugees, people who take a truck and they go to a crowded area and they mow down a whole bunch of people. Well, I think that's a big problem. And a lot of the open borders people I disagree with, and they poo-poo that problem. They say, well, there are only a few that do this and it's not so bad and whatever. I think it's despicable what they do, and I think we should do everything we can to stop that. On the other hand, I go through the following scenario. I say, suppose somebody comes in to the middle of Wyoming in the Rocky Mountains or in the middle of Alaska and comes in, say, by helicopter, or somehow he gets there, or he comes from Mars or India or Africa. I don't care where he comes from. And he starts homesteading unhomesteaded land, virgin territory. And there's plenty of virgin territory in the Rockies. If you're in a plane and you look over the Rockies and you look down, it is empty. You go over Alaska, there are no people in Alaska. I mean, there are a few Juneau and Fairbanks along the coast, but there are no people in Alaska. So here's a guy, an immigrant. He comes in and he starts homesteading. He plants some corn, he domesticates a cow, whatever it is, and him and a few hundred people, and they're living there. Did he violate rights? No, he didn't violate rights. Therefore, anyone from ICE or any policeman or any border patrol person who comes to him and says, hey, show me your papers, and he says, what papers? I don't have papers. And he says, well, you're going to jail. He is violating the rights of the immigrant. So this is the case for open borders. On the other hand, we have the refugees and the truck refugees. So how do we have our cake and eat it? You see, the problem I have with the limited open border people like Murray Rothbard and Hans Hoppe, they say, look, refugees, truck refugees, keep them out. And I say, yes, I want to keep them out, but I don't want to violate libertarian principle because I have this lust, love, perversion for libertarian theory. I want to promote libertarian theory. I don't want to safeguard us at the cost of libertarian theory. I want to have our cake and eat it. I want to safeguard us from rape refugees and truck refugees, and I don't want to violate libertarian principle. So how do I do it? And I've written several articles on this. What I say is, getting back to the P word, privatization, privatize every square inch of the country. Privatize every road, privatize every river, lake, river, whatever. Privatize every square inch of Alaska and of Wyoming and Colorado and all those places that are just empty, Nevada. Then, when everything is privatized, then if somebody comes in, we say, hey, guess what? You're a trespasser. Get out. You're a criminal. So in that way, we can have our cake and eat it. We can safeguard ourselves, and we don't violate libertarian principle. Now, what Hans Hoppe would say, here's an objection. He would say, well, the government really is the guarantor or the guardian of all that property that I said was virgin territory and never owned in the middle of Wyoming and the Rocky Mountains in the middle of Alaska. The government really isn't the owner, but the government is the guardian of it. And I said, well, that's a very strange view for an anarcho-capitalist to take. They're not the guardian. They never mix their labor with any of that land. That land is empty. So I insist that the only solution is privatization. And again, I resort to my little aphorism: if it moves, privatize it; doesn't move, privatize it. Privatize everything. Well, you see, this is the problem when you don't have private property rights. If we had private property rights, the whole problem would go away. Because then we would be selective. We'd say, yes, you're an engineer, you're a doctor, you're a physicist, you're a philosopher. Sure, come on in. And there are people that will welcome you. So there'll be a university that'll hire you. There'll be a corporation that wants to hire you. You can set up your own business. You're coming in with some money. That's no problem. But when the terrorist types come in, nobody wants them, and we would be able to kick them out if they came in, and keep them out from coming in the first place, because they would have to come into already owned property. But this means, you're from New York, Central Park has got to be privatized. I'm from New Orleans. We have Audubon Park a half a mile away from me. It's got to be privatized, because if it's not privatized, the immigrant comes in the middle of Audubon Park and says, hey, here I am. And we as libertarians can't say him nay. We can't say, well, you're on private property. It's not private property. It's government property, and it's a virtue to homestead a government property to get it into private hands. So that would be my answer to the immigration or borders issue.
Well, I'm glad